Whoa, Prof! That thing appeared out of nowhere, and he was very upset. What was it?
It was an old make of surveillance robot. I thought they had all been dismantled. Detroit must have recycled it and fitted it with machine guns. I hope we've lost it now.
Professor, you're breaking up. I can't hear you properly.
The signal down here is getting weaker. I'm being watched. Hurry!
Welcome to World 2, the sewers. I guess we're getting that out of the way early. Right here at the start, there's some turning platforms that are really easy. And in between them right here are a bunch more orbs, which we really need those, because this level is the first one where we have mandatory fights. So that means you'll actually get to see our special attack, or our panic mode as the game calls it. And there's a new enemy type right up here. Right after we carefully burst open these crates, because there's an explosive barrel right behind them. This one is called a radioactive abominion, whatever that is supposed to mean, and it has a small projectile attack, which we thankfully can easily avoid. They might actually be a problem if we ever had to fight them, but they're not mandatory enemies, we can just hop right past them. Any enemies with projectiles are bound to be more difficult to deal with, because, I mean, your projectile's really bad. We can take fall damage in this game. I didn't think we could, because that seemed really mean, in addition with how boring and frustrating the game already is. Also, that platform falls down, but it doesn't do anything. So there's no reason for it to fall or even be there in the first place. This enemy has the distinction of being even easier to stunlock than most. I like that they have little stats over to the left, like those actually mean anything. It feels like the people who designed this game wrote down those stats in a notebook, and they're like, okay, how do we actually implement these? And then they couldn't figure out how to do that. It is kind of remarkable in this game when the game design works as intended, which is embarrassing because there's so little of it. In fact, right here in this new area is an example of the game design not working as intended. There's another timer switch, and we're supposed to use the super run to make it over here and up these steps in time. But instead we're just going to smash on the jump button. Now it might be preferable to use the super run in the other versions where the super run is triggered by a button instead of a waggle, but we don't have that luxury. All we gotta do from here is make it onto that pipe in time, which thankfully we have more than enough time to do that. If there's one thing in this game that isn't frustrating, it's surprisingly the timers. And right over here we'll find these, what were they called again? Dump something? These enemies are actually the first ones we need to fight to open a gate. And I know I said we were going to use our super attack, but that's not necessary this time. You'll see it soon enough. If I'm making the combat here look really dumb and awful, that's not my fault. There's no real strategy to this game. And if you try to use strategy the way the game, suggests that you do, then it's going to be way more frustrating. Fighting normal enemies with the bazooka is just not even a little bit practical.
Professor, I can't reach the button! There's a metal grate in the way!
That's what your bazooka is for. Use the freezing laser ammo to blast it. Frozen metal is weaker, so you can destroy it using an ordinary punch attack.
I don't have any freezing laser ammo!
I believe there is ammo up there.
Cool! I'll be able to use this ammo against enemies as well!
Oh hey, it's time for a new mechanic. There are two alternate types of bazooka ammo, the freezing ammo and the fire ammo. The freezing ammo is infinitely more useful. Though it gets a little weird later in the game when there are enemies that are stated to be weak to the freezing ammo that aren't actually weak to it. And you can't tell me they just didn't know how to program different damage outputs because the enemies deal different damage. Right up these steps will be our first extra life, and I've memorized the location of quite a few of these, thankfully, because later levels in this game are full of hatred. Hatred at you, the player. My favorite review of Deep Black mentioned that it seemed like the game was made specifically to torture people. I feel that Deep Black is a notably better game than this. I mean, you can say what you will about it, and you'll probably be right, but at least its game design worked. In spite of my best efforts, you can't really break Deep Black. But you can break this game by just smashing the attack button and walking into enemies. That is when the game actually makes you fight them. I assume it wanted you to fight them all of the time, because otherwise why would the enemies be there? We did have to kill those two, by the way, or else this wouldn't raise up and let us move forward. This game's goddamn lighting, I swear, it reminds me of really bad children's films that I watched on Netflix. And also a really excellent children's film called Gloop. You know, I don't like saying bad things about video games. I wish this video game would not make me do that. Sometimes you find these games no one has recorded, like a really cool Japanese beat-em-up or a weird graphic novel-style Bomberman spin-off, and that's super cool. And then you find Sid the Dummy, and you can't even feel good about hating it because the developers clearly cared so much about what they were doing here and just didn't know how to do anything right. We can use our ice laser or ice bazooka, whatever, to freeze this gate and bust it down. This is an extra area, we don't need to come in here. If we somehow lost our freezing ammo before we reach this gate, then we could get some from that little blue room that we just passed a bit ago. And we do want to come in here because this is an extra life. You know, having already fully recorded this game, I can guarantee you right now this is the single most skillful playthrough of Sid the Dummy that will ever exist. I am trying so hard to find interesting things. You know that you see the rust on the ceiling in this room? That's kind of interesting, right? Anyway, now that we're done with the extra area, there's a button right outside that when we press will activate another timer, and there's our first difficult jump right here. But it's definitely possible to make it after a couple of tries, and no, you can't use your super run and then jump to get a further jump. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes, as you're about to see, Sid will grab ledges, but I wouldn't rely on that, because it only seems to activate when it wants to. Now, if you recall, we passed over a grate on our way here, and that's what this is all about. We want to press a switch to open that grate. We're actually almost done with the interesting part of this level. I know, shocking, right? You might not even know that we got to the interesting part. We could have gone to the left to come back down, but it's easier to go to the right, much shorter. Okay, it's time for the first room where we're actually going to use our super attack. It's basically just an area of effect screen clearing move. And we're going to use it a lot later in the game, when fighting enemies is more and more of a necessity. And now it's time for things to get kinda sad.
Professor, I don't think I can swim!
Don't panic! I've just upgraded your circuits again. You can now use your swim mode.
It looks tiring. Will swimming use up a lot of my stamina?
Picking up a stamina bonus will restore your stamina levels.
Oh, great! Now I have to swim in sewer water!
Be very careful not to touch the underwater mines or they'll explode.
How nice of them to animate the professor showing us what we need to do. Now, I will say right away that the controls for swimming are actually not that terrible. They're responsive, and you never have to struggle with the Wiimote. It just does what you want it to. The problem with the swimming sections is not the controls, it is rather how painfully dull it is, even compared to the rest of the game. But after this level, swimming plays a very minor role, to the extent that you might have forgotten it existed. Instead of oxygen, we are in danger of running out of our stamina, which is what we need to collect those little lightning bolt orbs for. There's only one place in the game where you're even remotely in danger of running out of stamina, and it's in this swimming section right here in this level. We've reached air, but only briefly. This is an extra area, and it doesn't have anything we want, just a lot of health, which would be, you know, useful if we ran into those mines that were very easy to avoid. But you still have to hope that those crates would contain health pickups all the time. Down here is a new hazard, green goo that shoots out of the wall. This is actually kind of difficult to avoid because of the way the swimming works. And if you don't feel like being patient, you can totally just tank it. Oh, by the way, when I say the way the swimming works, I don't mean the controls. I just mean that he moves in short bursts. So it's not challenging for bad reasons, but it's still kind of, unremarkable. I mean, it's a decent hazard, but a single decent hazard isn't going to save you right now. You know, the majority of the game needs to be interesting, not just bits and pieces, and that wasn't even interesting. It was just, what's the word? Competent. So that's it for this, basically. There's nothing else from here until the end of the swimming section. We briefly surface for air right here, and then it's pretty much nothing but straight swimming until the end. So if it's alright with you, I'm just going to, for my health and my continued consciousness, to skip until the end of the swimming segment. Okay, and right up here after these few platforms is the exit to the level. I'll see you guys next time.
Not such a dummy now!